What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving my reaction and review of Megan Fox's latest sci-fi thriller, Subservience. And just so you guys know, this video will contain mild spoilers, so if you haven't gotten around to watching this movie yet and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. Subservience is an American-made sci-fi thriller film directed by S.K. Dale from a screenplay by Will Honley and April Maguire. It stars Megan Fox as an artificial intelligent gynoid who gains sentience and becomes hostile, and Michelle Morone as her purchaser. And this movie was released on September 13th of this year. Now, at the time of the making of this video, the movie has a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 30 critic reviews. And the film's popcorn meter currently sits at 48% based on over 250 verified ratings. Now, the film does not have a Metascore yet on Metacritic, but it does have a user score of 5.5 based on 21 user ratings. And finally, it has a 5.3 out of 10 on IMDb with over 11,000 ratings. So I'll admit to you guys, I'd heard about this movie when it first came out. But honestly, I had a full plate already with the movies and shows I was prioritizing here on the channel. And I was working on a rewrite of my first feature film script. So there's that. And I also thought about watching Megan Fox try to play a robot who becomes self-aware in a movie. And I just wasn't sure I wanted to go sit in the theater for that. But now that the film is out on Netflix and I finished my rewrite, I figured what the hell. Now, I thought the movie felt generic right from the start. In the opening image, we get a sweeping wide shot of a city surrounded by a lake on one side and mountains on the other. Now, we don't know what city we're supposed to be in. And to complicate matters even further, we don't know what year it's supposed to be. And this becomes important because there are these things called Sims that are available for purchase, but they also are kind of, being utilized in every facet of life. So I would assume that we're in the future, but how far in the future, I have no idea. That would have been nice to know, but we never really get told. And I won't lie, I hate it when filmmakers do this, right? I think that the setting is just as much of a part of the story as the plot and the characters, but in this particular case, I guess the filmmakers did not think it was all that important because all they had to do was superimpose that this is supposed to be XYZ city, year XYZ. Something really, really simple that could have been done, but I digress. The story felt really contained, right? Almost claustrophobic at times. And I'll admit, I can understand that for an independent film on a shoestring budget. But given the movie's premise, I find it hard to believe that it was a shoestring budget. But this movie managed to feel both like a low-budget indie and a mid-level Netflix original, all at the same time. So go figure. Now, I thought the story progressed in rather predictable fashion after the writers completely whiffed on the setup in favor of a catalyst that came almost 10 minutes too soon, given the film's runtime, only to then double back for said setup after the fact. And I don't know how to feel about that decision because, look, when you're a creative, you can, I guess in theory, you can do whatever you want. And so, there are decisions made in the name of creativity, and then there are decisions that make people think you don't know what you're doing. Now, I thought this decision definitely felt like the latter. But again, it is just me. One of the first things I learned as a screenwriter is how the beats are supposed to be dispersed throughout a film. And the first act was a mess. Now, I thought the characters, the main ones at least, were flimsy at best, with not much depth to them. And I understand that Alice was meant to be an empty shell that begins to fill up as the story moves along, right, as she becomes more self-aware. But the wife was essentially a long, winding plot device with 2 scoops of ice cream and a cherry on top, maybe some whipped cream. which made me feel like the writers could have just done away with her by the end of Act 1. I felt like she kind of had served her purpose. And then I thought the story could have just gone on as kind of a man versus robot kind of situation. I felt like the wife's existence past the break into two really complicated a narrative that could have been really simple and straightforward. But again, that's just me. I thought the casting here was a bit subpar, right? But, there's no info on what the budget of this film was, so I have no way of knowing if the producers could have done better or not, right? Sometimes, you have a small budget, and so you start thinking, well, casting-wise, who can we afford? But, again, like I said, I don't know what the budget was, so I really don't know if they could have done better or not. Now, I thought the acting was barely serviceable, right? I thought Madeline Zima was okay, right? But I found Michelle Marone's performance lacking. Really, really, really felt empty. And in that regard, I'm pretty convinced that there were better choices out there for that particular role. But depending on, like I said, where the movie was actually filmed, because a lot of times what they'll do in casting is, well, who lives in this country? It definitely looked like it wasn't filmed in the U.S., but, I don't know. Now, people are saying that Megan Fox was amazing in this particular role. Now, I just thought she was okay. Now, I guess she maybe has had some work done on her face over the years, because it does look a little bit plastic. She does look a little bit plastic in the face. And, and her body is still booming at almost 40. Listen, she looked amazing in that lingerie in the bathroom scene. I refuse to take that away from her, right? She stayed in shape or has had work done, whatever. And speaking of the bathroom scene, right, I really thought that sex was overused in this story, with it only really being necessary the once, and that was the scene between Alice and Nick / Maggie in the bathroom. I understand why Nick had to sleep with Alice the one time, right? I get it, right? That's kind of part of, I would have made that decision and that choice too. But there were some other scenes where I'm just like, okay, now you just want to show people naked, kind of getting it on. It felt like to me. Because I didn't understand why when Maggie was laid up in the hospital with a serious heart issue, Nick was basically, making out with her in the hospital bed. Like my man was down to climb on top of her in her hospital gown. I was just like, okay, he is doing the absolute most. And then fresh out of the hospital and clearly needing rest, with a fresh scar on her chest, he basically tries to bang her out in the shower, and then he goes down on her in the bedroom. And I just felt like these scenes just didn't make a whole lot of sense given the plot points that had come before. And it felt like the writers were just dead set on making sure we got to see two actresses known for steamy roles, stripped down and bang one out. And, after the midpoint, the rest of the film plays out exactly like you think it will. Beat for beat, in fact, with the only real questions being, will Maggie or Nick die before the end of the film? And if they both happen to survive, will they or won't they reconcile after Nick's fidelity, with the robot, who sounds like Maggie, while Maggie's laid up, waiting in the hospital for a heart transplant. And, finally, the climax, involves the couple having to kill Alice more than one time in order to save their own lives and the lives of their kids. And the movie's ending is totally cliche, with that task still being left undone, which makes you kind of, what the hell was the point then, Now, overall, I'd give this film a 45% or a 4.5 if you're thinking IMDb score. Guys, this movie was a mess, especially from a beat mapping perspective. The writers really skipped over some fundamental things in the crafting of this script. I mean, the setup was all out of order. And it kind of even confused you because, when you're watching films, you kind of develop this kind of internal clock where certain things are supposed to happen. And the things were out of order here. And narratively, I gotta say this movie didn't make much more sense than it did from a beat mapping perspective either. And when you combine that with, subpar casting and so-so acting, you get what feels like should have been a straight-to-DVD type of mid-budget indie film. I can't believe this film got a theatrical release, you know what I mean? With the best thing about it being Megan Fox. in her lingerie. But what do you guys think? Have you seen Subservience yet? If you have, did you think it was as big a mess as I did? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you really like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. You can also now support the channel by leaving a super thanks. If you should be so inclined, I'd really appreciate it. Also, be sure to go and check out themaskscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. And I'll catch y'all in the next video.